What's going on? It's Trending Story. If it's your first time here and you want to find out new facts that will definitely make you smarter and more well informed, make sure to subscribe and activate the notifications bell so you don't miss anything.
The father threw his son in the rails, but what the bear did was amazing. An amazing story about how a bear stole a child right in front of her father, thereby saving the child from death. Alexei and Nastia got married when both of them were 17 years old, which made all the villagers attend their wedding ceremony, and they were all amazed at the great love affair that concluded the two got married. Months after the two got married, Nastia discovered that she was pregnant, and then she and her husband were very happy, and they began to come to receive their first son. They set aside a small room for the new boy, brought a wardrobe and a small bed, and bought clothes and toys to welcome him. The couple were not only planning to have one child, they wanted more, because, as usual, a village family must have many children. When it was time to give birth to Nastia, Alexei called his friend who owned a car to take his wife to the hospital, but he told him that his car had broken down. Then the young man became very nervous and immediately called the ambulance. The ambulance was so late that Nastia collapsed completely, while her husband kept holding her and trying to calm her down. When the ambulance arrived, the young woman had gone to the hospital, where she was immediately taken to the maternity ward. The young man was waiting, and after a few moments, the nurse came out and told him that his wife would not be able to give birth naturally and would undergo surgery, which made him more worried. After 5 hours of the operation, the doctor came out with a pale face and told the husband that his wife died in the operating room, and the little boy survived at the last minute. Alexei was shocked when he heard what the doctor said and started screaming with all his might. He could not imagine that his wife, whom he loved and had dreamed of living with all of his life, had left forever and would not return, and he rushed towards the operating room where their baby was crying. The young man did not want to see his son, who was in good health, because he considered him the cause of the death of the love of his life, and he refused to carry him in the beginning in his hands. But the nurses tried to calm him and told him that the little boy needed him. When the doctor noticed that the father was in a difficult psychological state, he asked the nurses not to give him the son because he might hurt him. Then he told Alexei that he could go home and return after a week to take the boy. Alexei was not thinking about the little one at all. When they called him from the hospital to go to bring his son, he told them that he did not want to see him and that they should get rid of him. When Natasha's grandmother, Natasha Ivanovna, heard what had happened with her grandson, she went to the hospital and brought her grandson to live with her in her home, where she took care of him and brought him everything he needed. 6 months passed, and the little boy's father did not appear, so he completely ignored him and did not admit that he had a son from his cross. The grandmother tried to call him and ask him to come and see his little boy and hold him in his hands because he needed him, but he did not talk to her and ignored her every time. One time the grandmother decided to see Alexei, as she took her grandson in her arms and went to look for him in his house, but she did not find him there. And when she asked about him, one of the neighbors told her that he was always going the way of the railroad near the woods, and he sits there. Then the grandmother immediately went to the railway road to search for her daughter's husband. When she got there, she found the young man sitting on the rail with a bottle of wine in his hand. He was really drunk. The grandmother approached him and tried to talk with him, but he was almost unconscious and refused to speak completely. Although she placed his son on his bosom, he did not care. The grandmother lost hope and decided to return to her home, but at that moment she noticed a little bear stuck in the railway. While the train was approaching him very quickly, then she put her grandson on the ground and went running toward the little bear and removed him from the railway. At the last moment, the train almost hit her. The grandmother was terrified, but rejoiced when she realized that she had managed to save the little bear. Meanwhile, a large bear appeared, most likely the mother of the little animal, as she approached the grandmother. Then the grandmother left the little bear and returned to carry her grandson, and then quickly moved away from that place because she was afraid that the ferocious bear would attack her. The grandmother was walking and looking behind her because the bear and her baby were following her. She didn't understand what they wanted from her, as they did not want to harm her. Otherwise, they would hurry to catch up with her. The grandmother thought they might want to thank her for what she had done, but they could not find a way to do so. The bear came every day with her cub and sat across from the grandmother's house for some time, then left. Then Natasha Ivanova realized that the two animals were peaceful and wanted a friendship with her. Then she offered them food and water, approached them and touched them kindly, while her grandson was the 2-year-old approaches and the little bear plays with him. One day, Father Alexei came to the grandmother and told her that he wanted to take his baby boy because he decided to marry again and wanted to build his life anew. The news pleased the grandmother a lot, and she gave the baby to his father and gave him clothes and things, and then she said goodbye to him with tears in her eyes. The grandmother went every day to visit her grandson, and she was very happy that his father had taken care of him, and he was planning to marry a young woman he had recently met named Olga. Days passed, and the bear and the little cub did not come to Natasha Ivanova's house to visit her, which made the grandmother think they had moved to live elsewhere. But one day, while the grandmother was sitting in the yard of the house, she saw the bear and the baby approaching her house. Then she smiled. She waited impatiently for their arrival, and when they arrived at her, she noticed that the mother bear was carrying something in her mouth. Yes, it was a small child, and when the bear placed him on the ground, the grandmother approached him, and there was shocked. The boy was her grandson, whom she left days ago with his father. He was calm but exhausted from the way the bear carried him to the house. After the grandmother was reassured about her grandson's condition, she picked him up immediately and went to the police to tell them what had happened. And when the police began investigating the incident, they discovered that the father, Alexei, suddenly remembered his ex-wife, and he drank until he got drunk, and then carried his son in his hands and went to the railroad and put him down there on the iron bars. And he continued to drink alcohol. Then he lost consciousness and fell asleep on the edge of the track, while his son remained sitting on the tracks. And when the express train approached him, the bear intervened and pulled the child at the last moment, then immediately took him to his grandmother's house and left his father sleeping there. The bear returned the favor to the grandmother, who saved her son months ago and saved her grandson from certain death after his drunk father overlooked him. The police issued a warning to Alexei that they would withdraw custody of the son from him if the son was neglected in the future, but the father regretted what had happened and promised them that this would not happen again. He decided to marry his girlfriend Olga immediately, and they took care of the little one all the time. Therefore, Alexei decided to stop drinking alcohol completely and began to devote all of his time to his son, who became very much loved and attached to him. For her part, the bear and her little one returned to visit grandmother Natasha Ivanova in her home. She began to spend most of her time in her house, and the grandmother began to bring her grandson to her house to play from his wonderful friends.
Thanks for watching. Please like and share the video in social networks. We'll be right back to you as fast as we can.